How shocked would you be if you found another man's semen on your wife's panties? No, seriously, just take a moment and picture that. It's not something you ever expect to find. And I'll tell you right now, that image is burned into my brain like a sick, twisted photograph that I wish I could unsee. For most people, I imagine the next step would be rage, blind fury, accusations, shouting matches, maybe even throwing shit around the room. But me? I didn't start with a fight. You know why? Because before all that anger came crushing in, I froze. And in that frozen moment, I knew I needed to figure out what the hell was going on, who I was really dealing with, and whether there was still a way to hold on to the wreckage that used to be my marriage. Now, before I get ahead of myself, I should introduce myself. My name is Brian, and I'm a man like any other. Work, bills, a couple of beers with the guys when I can squeeze it in. I'm 46, and for the past 17 years, I've been married to Rachel. Let's just say she and I have had our fair share of ups and downs. When we first met, it felt like some kind of whirlwind romance that was straight out of a fairy tale. You know, the love at first sight crap they shove down your throat in movies. And for a while, it was great. But like all things, it started to change. I work as a logistics coordinator. It's not exactly the most glamorous job, but I get by. Rachel? She used to be an elementary school teacher before she quit a few years back to find herself and pursue her dreams. Whatever the hell that meant. And you know what the most ironic part is? I always thought of us as that couple that could weather any storm. I guess every sucker thinks that before reality slaps them in the face. Our marriage was rocky. Hell, it was practically a roller coaster, but what relationship isn't, right? And yeah, we fought. Not all-out screaming matches, but those passive-aggressive, under-your-breath comments that build up like a slow poison. The kind of arguments that don't end in resolution, but in silence. A door closed just a little too hard, and both of us retreating to our corners like boxers waiting for the bell. We even tried counseling at one point. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Cliché as hell. We sat on those uncomfortable-ass couches, pouring our hearts out to some stranger who pretended to care while charging us more than my monthly grocery bill. And for what? To end up exactly where we started. If anything, all those therapy sessions just left us more resentful, more bitter. A waste of time and money, but hey, at least we tried. Now, why don't we just pull the plug and get a divorce right then and there? The simple answer is that it's complicated. 17 years of history, an entire web of mutual friends, and, of course, that gut-wrenching sense of familiarity. And when you've been with someone that long, you develop this attachment. Maybe it's not love anymore, but it's something, a feeling like you owe each other a little bit more time, just in case things can go back to how they were. Then there were the friends. John, Gary, Rose, our little circle. For the longest time, my house was like the hub for all of us. I don't know why it worked out that way. It just did. We were right in the middle of everyone geographically, and that made it easy for folks to drop by, stay over, shoot the shit, drink until the sun came up. Our place was the spot where all of us came together. And truthfully, I love those moments. I love those people. I thought we were like family. But as it turns out, not all of them were as sincere as I thought. But that's something you'll come to understand soon enough. Rachel was always the social type, the one who seemed to shine in the spotlight at those gatherings. Laughing the loudest, pouring drinks, playing hostess like she was born for it. And me? I was just happy to be there, to have our place feel alive, filled with the people who I thought genuinely cared about us, about me. I don't know when exactly it started to change. When the warmth of those gatherings became a show I couldn't see past. Maybe it was one of those nights when I watched Rachel laugh a little too hard at one of Gary's jokes, or when I caught John glancing at her in a way that seemed to linger a second too long. But it wasn't until that day, the day of the panty discovery, that I felt the full weight of what was happening around me. And the worst part was I didn't even see it coming. It's funny how the mind works. You can spend years ignoring the obvious, fooling yourself into thinking that everything is fine when deep down, you know something is off. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's denial, or maybe it's just plain stupidity. But whatever it is, when the truth hits you, it's like a freight train, fast, brutal, and impossible to stop. And so, there I was, standing in my own bedroom, holding my wife's underwear in my hands and staring at undeniable evidence that another man had been there, been with her. And all I could think was, how did it come to this? Trust me, if you're looking for a story with happy endings or silver linings, you might want to turn back now. Because what I'm about to tell you is messy, raw, and if I'm being honest, a hell of a lot darker than I ever thought my life could get. But if you're still with me, buckle up. It's a wild ride, and we're only just getting started. There's this moment in every dying relationship when it hits you like a punch to the gut. You don't just feel numb, you feel hate. I'm not talking about that flash of anger when she rolls her eyes at you during a fight. I'm talking about the day you realize you'd rather be dead than spend another goddamn minute breathing the same air as her. For me, that day came out of nowhere, on a day that was supposed to be just like any other. It was a Tuesday, and the plan was simple. Go to work, deal with the endless bullshit of my job, come home, and do what I did every night. Sit on the couch, watch TV, try to pretend that Rachel and I were still trying to make things work. Except that day, things didn't go to plan. The server at the office crashed or something. I don't know, I'm not an IT guy, and it left me with nothing to do but twiddle my thumbs. My boss gave us the green light to pack up and head out early, and so I found myself driving home in the middle of the day, which is something I rarely ever do. And then I saw it. John's car. Now, I want to make something clear. It wasn't like seeing his car there was a shocker. John was one of those friends who'd come by a lot, almost like he had a second home at my place. Hell, we used to laugh about it. And since my house was practically the neighborhood bar and grill for our little circle, it wasn't unusual for him to stop by, even if I wasn't around. But that day something felt different. And that's when I made my mistake. As I pulled up to the garage, my hand twitched, and I accidentally tapped the horn. Stupid, right? But that stupid little honk was like a warning bell, and I knew it. In an instant, that cozy, familiar feeling of home was replaced by this weird, prickling tension. It was almost like the house itself knew I wasn't supposed to be there, like I was an intruder on my own turf. The front door opened, and there was John, standing there, looking like a deer caught in headlights. I tried to play it cool. I even forced a smile, because what was I supposed to do? Start shouting just because my buddy looked a little off? But there was something in his eyes, a flash of panic that he tried to mask with some awkward grin. "Hey man," I said, trying to sound casual, though every nerve in my body was screaming that something was off. "You all right?" Yeah, all good," he stammered, glancing back toward the hallway, as if someone was about to come running. He was fidgety, like he couldn't wait to leave, and every second he stood there just made the air between us thicker, heavier. And then she came out, Rachel. She wasn't dressed like someone lounging around the house. Her hair was tousled in that way that isn't quite messy, but isn't put together either. Her face was flushed, and she wore this little silk robe tied, just a bit too loose, like she barely had time to throw it on. "Oh, hey, hon, I didn't know you'd be home this early," she said, her voice high-pitched and bubbly, the way people sound when they're trying too damn hard to act normal. She gave me this smile, a forced grin that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't say a word. I just looked at her, and then at John, and back at her. They stood there, both of them trying too hard to act casual, but I could feel it. The lie between them was like a thick fog filling the room, and I was choking on it. So, what did I do? Did I confront them right then and there? Did I start screaming and demanding to know what the hell was going on? Nope. I didn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, I said, "I'm just going to change clothes, get comfortable." And with that, I walked past them both, right into the bedroom. Now, I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew something was off, and I needed proof. The kind of proof that hits you in the face like a hammer. I started rifling through drawers, the closet, anywhere that seemed out of place. My mind was racing a mile a minute, and I felt like I was grasping at straws until I got to the bed. I knelt down and peered underneath. And that's when I saw it, a small bundle, barely noticeable in the shadows. I reached out and grabbed it, and as soon as I pulled it out, I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a pair of Rachel's panties, but not just any pair. They were the lacy, barely their kind, the ones she only wore when she wanted to be seen, when she wanted to feel sexy. And they weren't just shoved under there like laundry that had fallen off the bed. No, they were crumpled, used, and unmistakably stained. There are some things in life you just know without question, and this was one of them. I didn't need a lab test. I didn't need to ask a single damn person. I knew exactly what those stains were, and I knew exactly what they meant. Another man's come on my wife's panties. You don't have to ask how I knew. Every man just knows. It's like some unspoken instinct, a primal understanding that cuts right to the core. I sat back on my heels, holding those panties in my hands, feeling the anger boil up inside me like molten lava. But as much as I wanted to march out of that bedroom, shove them in Rachel's face, and tear the whole house down around me, something held me back. Because what I was looking at wasn't just betrayal, it was a puzzle. And if I wanted to know how deep this betrayal went, I had to play it smart. So there I was, standing in my own bedroom, my heart pounding like a jackhammer, holding the evidence that my wife had cheated on me with one of my closest friends. And in that moment, I realized I had two choices. I could go full nuclear, storm out there, and let all hell break loose, or I could play it cool, keep my mouth shut, and find out exactly how long this little charade had been going on and just how far it had gone. I chose the second option. I chose silence. Because sometimes, when you're staring down the barrel of a loaded gun, the smartest move is to wait for the perfect moment to pull the trigger. When I came out of the bedroom, Rachel and John were in the living room, huddled close, whispering in that way people do when they think they've got a secret. As soon as they saw me, they straightened up, pretending to be locked in some casual, quiet conversation about God knows what. But I could see it, the nervousness, the tension. It was like they were just actors on a stage, trying desperately to remember their lines while knowing they were about to mess up the whole performance. I didn't let on that I noticed. I just strolled past them, acting like everything was perfectly normal, like I hadn't just found the literal evidence of their betrayal in my hands a few moments earlier. "Coffee?" I asked, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face in two. They both nodded, too quickly, like they were just grateful for any distraction that didn't involve me standing there looking at them. "Yeah, coffee sounds great," John said, his voice still shaky. "Sure, honey, that'd be nice," Rachel added, her fake cheerfulness grating on my ears. So, I headed to the kitchen, and as soon as I was out of their sight, I reached into my pocket and pulled out those panties. My hands were steady, my movements slow and deliberate. I knew what I was going to do, and for some reason, it didn't even feel wrong. It felt right, like I was reclaiming some tiny piece of control in the middle of the chaos that was about to blow up my life. I took a spoon from the drawer and scraped a bit of the semen-stained fabric, letting that sticky, disgusting residue fall into the bottom of each of their coffee cups. It was a tiny amount, just enough to mix in with the coffee and milk where it would dissolve into that steaming darkness and blend in unnoticed. I almost smiled as I placed the cups under the coffee machine, watching the black liquid fill the mugs, drowning out any trace of what I'd just done. When the coffee was ready, I brought their cups out to them, careful to keep my face neutral. I handed one to John and the other to Rachel. As they took their first sips, I felt this twisted satisfaction. They were so damn clueless, sitting there drinking the evidence of their own deceit. And then, for a split second, I worried that maybe they'd notice that the taste would give it away. But nope, they just sat there, sipping like everything was perfectly fine. "This coffee tastes a little different," Rachel said, frowning slightly as she looked down into her cup. "Yeah, it's interesting," John added, glancing up at me with this weird look on his face, like he couldn't quite place what was off about it. I leaned back against the counter, crossed my arms, and grinned. "Yeah, I added a secret ingredient. How do you like it?" They both hesitated, looking at each other for a second before Rachel finally spoke. "It's good, I think. I mean, it's definitely different." "Yeah," John said, nodding a bit too eagerly. "Something new. I like trying new things." I stared at them both as they drank, feeling a wave of disgust and satisfaction wash over me all at once. "Well, that's great," I said, keeping my tone light, almost friendly. "I love people who enjoy something different." They kept sipping, forcing smiles between gulps, clearly trying to act like they were enjoying the moment. And I stood there, savoring every second of their cluelessness. But I knew that wasn't the end of it. That was just me getting my head straight, calming myself down enough to do what I had to do next. After a few minutes, I pretended to glance at my watch, like I was suddenly remembering something important. "Hey, listen, I gotta step out for a bit," I said. "Something came up, work stuff. Gotta make a couple of calls, maybe run an errand or two." Rachel looked a bit startled, but quickly covered it up with a smile. "Sure, honey. Go do what you need to do." John just nodded, looking more than a little relieved that I was leaving. Probably thought that meant he could make a quick exit himself, without me getting all suspicious. I walked back to the bedroom to grab my things, which was really just an excuse to return the panties to their original hiding spot under the bed. I needed everything to stay exactly as it was, to keep them feeling secure in their little fantasy world. Once that was done, I walked out the door, giving them both a quick nod before heading to my car. As I drove away, I knew exactly who I needed to talk to, Gary and Rose. They were the other half of our little circle of friends, the ones who'd been around for years. If anyone knew anything about what was going on behind my back, it would be them. And even if they didn't, I needed to start pulling this whole thing apart, one thread at a time. So I pulled out my phone, dialed up Gary, and when he picked up, I said, "Hey man, it's Brian. Listen, I need to meet up. Both you and Rose. Let's say, that cafe near the park? Half an hour?" Gary didn't hesitate. "Yeah, sure, we could be there. Everything okay?" I forced a laugh that sounded more convincing than I felt. Yeah, just something I need to talk about. See you soon." And with that, I hung up and headed toward the cafe, my mind already spinning with questions and possibilities. If today was going to be the start of me finding out the truth, then I needed to be ready to face whatever I found. Because once you start down this road, there's no turning back. I got to the cafe before Gary and Rose did, which was just as well. I needed a moment to collect myself, to figure out what the hell I was even going to say. I sat at one of those tiny round tables, the kind where you barely have enough room to set down 2 cups of coffee, let alone spread out and think. My knee bounced under the table as I stared out the window, watching for any sign of them. And then I saw them. Gary with his tall, lean frame, and Rose with that concerned look she always wore like a second skin. They walked in, spotted me right away, and made their way over. They greeted me with the usual smiles, but it was like I could see right through them. I could see the cracks, the nervousness hiding behind those friendly expressions. And maybe it was because I already had my guard up, but something about the way they looked at each other, those quick, darting glances, it felt off. "Hey man, what's going on?" Gary asked as they sat down. "You sounded, well, urgent." "Yeah. Is everything okay?" Rose added, her voice soft but strained. I didn't waste time with small talk. I went straight to it. "No, everything is not okay. I came home today and I found some things that make me think Rachel is cheating on me. With John." I watched their faces as I said it, expecting shock, maybe even disbelief. But what I got was different. They didn't look shocked at all. If anything, they looked guilty, nervous. They exchanged a glance, like they were having a silent conversation, and I could practically see the words passing between their eyes. "What?" I snapped, my voice louder than I meant it to be. "What's going on? You two know something, don't you?" Gary was the first to break. He sighed, ran a hand through his hair, and leaned back in his chair like he was about to drop a bomb on me. "Brian, listen, yeah, we know. We've known for a while now." I felt like the floor had just dropped out from under me. "What the hell do you mean, you know? How long?" Rose reached out like she was going to put a comforting hand on mine, but I pulled away, too angry to be touched. "We didn't know how to tell you," she said, her voice pleading, like she expected me to understand. We thought they'd stop. We tried to talk to them, to make them see sense, to get them to end it." "How long?" I asked again, and this time my voice was barely a whisper. It felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room, like I couldn't breathe until they answered me. Gary looked down at his hands, unable to meet my eyes. "It's been a couple of years, Brian. We didn't want to believe it at first, but yeah, it's been a while. Years. Not months. Not weeks. Years." The words slammed into me like a brick wall, and I sat there, staring at them, trying to process what they were saying. And then, like a piece of the puzzle clicking into place, I understood. I understood why they were acting so weird, why they weren't surprised. They'd been in on it. Maybe not in on the cheating itself, but they'd known. They'd known, and they'd kept it from me. "Are you fucking serious?" I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and disbelief. "You knew all this time, and you didn't tell me?" Rose's eyes were glassy, like she was about to cry, but I didn't care. I didn't care about her excuses or her bullshit explanations. We thought it was a phase," she said. "We even caught them once red-handed. Rachel, she begged us not to tell you. She said she was going to end it, that it was a mistake, that she wanted to save your marriage." Save my marriage? I practically spat the words at them. You thought you were doing me a favor by lying to my face? By letting me live in a fantasy while my wife was screwing my so-called friend? Gary shook his head, looking like he was about to throw up. We didn't know what to do, Brian. It's not like we were okay with it. We tried, we really did, to make them stop. But we thought if we told you, it would destroy you. Destroy your marriage. And we didn't want that. Bullshit. I slammed my fist on the table, making both of them jump. The other people in the cafe turned to look at us, but I didn't care. Let them stare. Let the whole goddamn world see what betrayal looks like. You didn't want to destroy my marriage? You think you did me some kind of favor by keeping this from me? You think you're my friends? Gary tried to reach out to calm me down, but I was past that. We are your friends, Brian, he said, his voice strained. That's why this was so hard. We didn't want you to be hurt. Well, congratulations, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You really fucking nailed that one. I feel great, Gary. Just fantastic. I pushed back my chair and stood up, the anger rolling off me in waves. I felt like I was going to explode, like all the rage and betrayal was going to rip me apart from the inside out. And as I looked down at Gary and Rose, all I could see were two faces I once trusted, faces that now made my blood boil. You should have told me, I said, my voice low and deadly serious. You should have told me the second you found out. And with that, I turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving them sitting there with their guilt and their excuses. Because as far as I was concerned, they weren't my friends anymore. They were just two more people who'd lied to me, who'd let me walk around like a fool while the people closest to me tore my life apart behind my back. And as I walked down the street, my mind raced. If Gary and Rose knew, who else knew? How many more of my friends were in on this secret? And how far had Rachel gone to keep this lie alive? Sitting in my car after the meeting with Gary and Rose, all I felt was emptiness, a hollow void that swallowed up every last bit of who I thought I was. I'd spent years pretending that my marriage still had some shred of hope, that we were just going through a rough patch, but that illusion was long gone now. Rachel's betrayal had cut deep, and if she wanted to play dirty, I was ready to play along. I knew one thing for sure. Rachel was never going to come clean, not on her own, and she was never going to see me coming if I decided to fight back, not with the kind of revenge I had in mind. If she wanted to play me like a fool, I'd make her see how it feels to think your world is crashing down around you. I was going to have an affair, or at least make her think I was. For the next few days, I started acting different around her. More distant, more distracted. I went out of my way to look like I was preoccupied with someone else, someone she didn't know about. I'd leave the room to take phone calls, making sure to speak low enough that she couldn't quite make out what I was saying. I'd spend longer than usual on my phone, always with a smirk on my face like I was getting messages that were meant to be private. And at night, when she'd usually make some half-assed attempt to sit with me on the couch and watch TV, I'd excuse myself, telling her that I was tired or that I had work to do in the bedroom. Anything to make her wonder. And she did. It started with little things. A glance from the corner of her eye, a question that seemed innocent enough but had that edge of suspicion. Who were you talking to just now? She'd ask as I hung up the phone. Oh, just someone from work, I'd say, brushing it off like it didn't matter. And it drove her crazy. I could see it in the way she bit her lip, the way her eyes darted to my phone whenever it buzzed. She'd start trying to peer over my shoulder while I texted, asking questions about my day that she never seemed to care about before. The tables were turning, and she didn't even know it yet. One night, I took it a step further. I needed to give her something more concrete, something that would burn into her brain like a brand. So, I called up an old friend of mine, a woman named Jessica, who had always been willing to help me out in a bind. I told her the situation, leaving out some of the more sordid details, and she agreed to play along. The plan was simple. We'd go out to dinner at a place Rachel and I never went to, and we'd stage it to look like a date. Nothing over the top, nothing too obvious. Just a cozy little scene between two people who looked like they were getting to know each other in that romantic way. I got dressed that night like I was going to an important meeting. Buttoned-up shirt, dark jeans, cologne, a look I hadn't put on for Rachel in years. When she saw me coming out of the bedroom, her eyes went wide, and she couldn't hide the shock in her voice. Going somewhere? She asked, trying to sound casual, but failing miserably. Yeah, I said, fiddling with my watch. Got dinner plans? Oh. She couldn't mask the edge in her tone. With who? Just a friend, I said with a shrug, giving her nothing to latch onto. Someone from work. I could see the wheels turning in her head as I walked past her, grabbing my keys from the counter. Don't wait up, I said, letting the door swing shut behind me. That night with Jessica went perfectly. We laughed, we leaned in close across the table, and I made sure to snap a couple of photos. Photos that looked just friendly enough to pass for a colleague, but intimate enough to set Rachel's imagination on fire. We staged the scene just right, making sure anyone who saw us would think we were a couple on the verge of something serious. When I got home that night, Rachel was waiting up for me, sitting on the couch with the lights dimmed, her eyes red and puffy like she'd been crying. She tried to play it cool, asking me how my night was, what we talked about. I gave her one-word answers, acted distracted like I couldn't care less about her curiosity. Who is she, Brian? She finally blurted out, her voice cracking under the strain. I know you're seeing someone. Just tell me the truth. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction, hearing those words come out of her mouth, knowing how much it hurt her not to be in control, not to know what was happening. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "Why do you care, Rachel? After all, you're not the only one who likes a little variety." She didn't know what to say. She just sat there, staring at me, trying to find some way to justify her jealousy when she'd been the one stepping out on me for years. I could see the guilt mixing with the anger, the panic flaring up in her eyes like a wildfire. And I let her stew in it. I let her feel what it was like to be left in the dark, to have everything you thought you knew get flipped upside down. And from that day on, the power dynamic shifted. Rachel, for the first time, was the one chasing me, trying to figure out who I was with, where I was going, what I was doing. And all the while, I just watched her unravel piece by piece, enjoying every damn second of it. Because sometimes revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making them feel what you felt, watching them squirm and burn, knowing that the pain they caused is finally coming back to bite them. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was the one holding the cards. And trust me, I wasn't going to fold anytime soon. I knew it was only a matter of time before Rachel finally cracked. She couldn't stand not knowing what I was up to, couldn't handle feeling out of control. And sure enough, one night she lost it. It was late, one of those nights when the silence is so thick, you can almost feel it pressing down on you. I was sitting at the dining table, pretending to scroll through my phone, and I could see her pacing out of the corner of my eye. Up and down, back and forth, like a caged animal. And then she stopped, planted herself right in front of me, and let loose. "Who is she?" she screamed, her voice shrill and cracking with desperation. "Who the hell is she, Brian? I know you're screwing around. Just admit it." I didn't even bother looking up. I just kept my eyes on my phone, scrolling past meaningless headlines and texts like I couldn't care less about the tornado ripping through our kitchen. And that only made her angrier. "Stop ignoring me," she shouted, slamming her fist on the table. "Do you think I don't know? I'm not stupid, Brian." And that's when she said it. The thing I'd been waiting to hear, the words that hung heavy between us for too long. "I've been cheating on you, okay? With John." There, I said it. And you know what? It was worth it. He actually cared about me, made me feel like I mattered. You're just a shell, a ghost. You don't even care about me anymore." I put my phone down slowly, letting her words hang in the air for a moment before I finally looked up at her. There was this wild, frantic look in her eyes, like she was daring me to explode, daring me to hit back with all the rage I was supposed to feel. But all I felt was a twisted kind of relief. Like I'd finally won a game I didn't know I was playing. "Of course I know," I said calmly. "I've known for a while now, Rachel. And everything I did, every little thing you thought was me cheating, it was just to screw with you. To make you feel what you put me through. You think you were hurting me? I was hurting you right back. I knew it would drive you insane, not knowing who I was with, where I was going. You deserved every second of it." She stood there, stunned, like I'd slapped her across the face. And for once, she had nothing to say. No excuses, no angry retorts. Just that look of shock and hurt that told me she never thought I'd be the one to turn the tables on her. "You know what, Rachel? I continued, standing up and pushing the chair back from the table. We should have done this a long time ago. This whole sham of a marriage should have ended years back. I'm done. We're done. I'll pack my things, find another place. And you? You can stay here. Enjoy it with John for all I care. She was crying by then, the kind of angry, bitter tears that don't come from sadness but from sheer frustration. Knowing she'd lost, knowing there was nothing left to fight for. But I didn't stick around to watch. I walked to the bedroom, grabbed whatever I could fit into a bag, and left that night. For the first time in years, I felt free. And yeah, it was a painful freedom, but at least it was real. A few weeks later, we started the process. Lawyers, paperwork, the whole 9 yards. It was as ugly as you'd expect, but at least it was moving forward. And as soon as I could, I found a new place. It wasn't much, a small apartment on the other side of town, but it was mine. And that was all I needed. I cut off contact with everyone from my old life. John, Rachel, Gary, Rose, hell, even their mutual friends, who probably knew more than they ever let on. I blocked their numbers, unfriended them online, and put as much distance between us as I could. It was like ripping off a Band-Aid, painful, messy, but necessary. And now, here I am, telling this story to whoever is willing to listen. If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering what you'd do in my place. And honestly, I don't know. Maybe you'd have done things differently. Maybe you'd have confronted them right away. Maybe you'd have tried to save your marriage. Or maybe you'd have burned it all down without a second thought. But one thing I can say for sure is this: be careful. Pay attention to the people you let into your life, and don't ignore those little red flags waving in the background. And if you're lucky enough to have someone who's worth fighting for, hold on tight and don't let go. Because once that trust is broken, there's no going back. Good luck out there. You're going to need it.